The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched higher than any cathedral on Earth. 12 massive thrones stood in a circle, each one holding a representative from the oldest and most powerful species in the known galaxy. The air hummed with translation devices, turning thousands of languages into one universal speech. At the center of this ancient chamber stood G1, the human ambassador, his dark suit looking plain and simple compared to the elaborate robes and armor of the council members. G1 had stood in this spot many times over the past 5 years. Each time he had come with ideas, proposals, and dreams for humanity's future among the stars. Each time he had been dismissed, laughed at, or ignored. Today would be different. Today would be the last time. The human delegation wishes to propose an expedition beyond the dark barrier, G1 said, his voice calm and steady. We believe there are uncounted worlds and civilizations waiting to be discovered. We ask the Council's blessing to explore this region. A sound like thunder rolled through the chamber. It was laughter. The Velcron representative, a creature that looked like living stone with eyes like burning coals, leaned forward on his throne. The dark barrier has been forbidden for 10,000 years, the Velcron said, his voice grinding like mountains colliding. It is chaos, danger, and death. Only fools would venture there. Or the desperate, added the Ordathi representative, a being of flowing light contained in a crystalline form. Her voice was musical but cold. Humanity has been among us for only 50 years. You are children playing with tools you barely understand. The Council's laws exist for good reasons. G1 expected this. He had expected all of it. Humanity had achieved faster-than-light travel through methods the Council called reckless and unproven. Human ships modified their engines in ways that made Council engineers nervous. Humans asked questions that were considered improper. They challenged traditions that had stood for millennia. They made the old comfortable order uncomfortable. We respect the Council's wisdom, G1 said, and he meant it. The Council had taught humanity much, but respect was not the same as obedience. However, humanity must grow. We must explore. It is our nature. If the Council forbids us from exploration, then we cannot remain. Silence fell over the chamber. It was the kind of silence that came before storms. You cannot remain? The Ordathi's light flickered with what might have been amusement. Are you threatening to leave the Council, human? I am stating a fact, G1 replied. Humanity joined the Council believing it was a partnership of equals. Instead, we have found a hierarchy where the young and new are expected to obey without question. This is not who we are. We will not become something we are not, even for the honor of a council seat. More laughter rippled through the chamber, but this time it was meaner, sharper. The representatives spoke among themselves, their voices mixing into a wall of sound. G1 caught fragments of their words. Arrogant. Ungrateful. They will fail without us. Let them go. The Velcron raised one massive hand, and silence returned. Very well, he said, and his smile showed teeth like broken mountains. The Council accepts humanity's withdrawal. You may leave our territories and venture wherever your foolish hearts desire. We will not stop you. We will not help you. When you realize your mistake, when your ships are lost and your colonies are dying, do not expect us to rescue you. We expect nothing from the Council, G1 said quietly, except respect for our decision. You have it, the Ordathi said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Go, humans. Go beyond the dark barrier. Go to your doom or your glory. The Council will remember you either as a cautionary tale or not at all. G1 bowed, not out of submission but out of courtesy. He turned and walked toward the great doors of the chamber. His footsteps echoed in the silence. Behind him he heard the Council members already discussing other matters, as if humanity had never existed. In the observation gallery above the chamber floor, a young analyst named Yuna watched G1 leave. She was Therum, a client species that served the Council in administrative roles. Her people had joined the Council 300 years ago and had prospered under its protection. But Yuna had spent the last 2 years studying humanity, reading their histories, analyzing their patterns. What she had learned troubled her. Humans did not accept limits the way other species did. When told something was impossible, they found a way to make it possible. When told to stay in their place, they built a ladder to climb higher. They were dangerous, yes, but not in the way the Council thought. They were dangerous because they changed things, because they refused to accept the way things had always been. Yuna had written 3 reports warning the Council that dismissing humanity might be a mistake. All 3 reports had been filed away and forgotten. The Council did not want to hear about potential problems. They wanted to hear that everything would continue as it always had. She watched as Jiwon disappeared through the doors. Somewhere deep in her mind, a thought formed, clear and frightening. The Council had just made the biggest mistake in its 10,000-year history. 3 months later, the human fleet departed from Council space. There were 200 ships in total, carrying 20 million people. They were farmers and engineers, soldiers and artists, children and elders. They were everyone who wanted to see what lay beyond the boundaries the Council had drawn. Jiwon stood on the bridge of the lead ship, the Horizon. Through the viewport, he could see the edge of Council space marked by ancient navigation beacons that had guided travelers for countless generations. Beyond those beacons lay the Dark Barrier, a region of space that sensors could not fully penetrate, where stars seemed to bend and twist in impossible ways. "All ships report ready," the captain said. Her name was Isul, and she was young for such responsibility, only 32. But she had trained on human ships with human methods, and she understood what this moment meant. "Then let us go," Jiwon said. "Let us find what waits in the dark." The fleet moved forward. One by one, the ships crossed the boundary line. One by one, they entered the Dark Barrier. One by one, they disappeared from Council sensors. Back on the Council homeworld, the Velkran and Ordathi raised glasses of exotic liquids in celebration. They had rid themselves of the troublesome humans. The galaxy would return to order. Everything would continue as it always had. They had no idea how wrong they were. They would not know for decades, and by then, it would be far too late to change what they had done. The Council had permitted humanity to leave in silence, believing it was an ending. Instead, it was a beginning, and the price of that mistake would echo through the centuries to come. 50 years had passed since the human fleet disappeared into the Dark Barrier. In that time, the galaxy continued as it always had. The Council met, made laws, and enforced peace across 1,000 star systems. Trade flowed along ancient routes. Wars were prevented before they could start. Everything was orderly, predictable, and safe. Counselor Hyun sat in his office overlooking the capital city of the Ordathi homeworld. He was older now, his crystalline form showing small cracks that came with age. He remembered the day the humans left. He had been young then, ambitious and certain that the Council's way was the only way. He still believed that mostly, but sometimes in quiet moments he wondered. "Sir, the expansion report is ready," his assistant said, placing a data tablet on his desk. Hyun picked it up and read through the numbers. They were not good. The Council had planned to colonize 15 new systems this decade. They had managed only 3. Population growth had slowed. Technology development had stalled. Several client species had requested permission to explore beyond Council space, and all had been denied. "This is unacceptable," Hyun muttered. "Why are we falling behind our projections?" His assistant, a young Velkran named Taiyang, hesitated before speaking. "Sir, some analysts believe that the loss of human innovation has affected our progress. They brought new ideas, new methods. Without them, we have returned to traditional approaches. Traditional approaches that have worked for 10,000 years, Hyun said sharply. We do not need reckless human thinking to maintain our civilization. But even as he said it, he knew the words rang hollow. The truth was harder to admit. The Council had grown comfortable, perhaps too comfortable. Without humans pushing boundaries and asking uncomfortable questions, everyone had settled back into old patterns. It was safer, yes, but it was also slower, much slower. Has there been any contact from the human territories? Hyun asked, though he already knew the answer. No, sir. Complete silence. Our monitoring stations at the Dark Barrier detect nothing. It is as if they vanished completely. Hyun nodded slowly. Part of him hoped the humans had failed, had realized their mistake and quietly died out in the dark. It would prove the Council right. But another part of him, a part he tried to ignore, hoped they had succeeded. Because if humanity had failed despite all their potential, what did that say about the galaxy? What did it say about the future? Meanwhile, on the far edge of Council space, Captain Taeyang led a military expedition into the outer territories. He had been promoted rapidly, his family connections and natural talent pushing him up through the ranks.
Now he commanded a small fleet of exploration vessels. tasked with checking on the old human colonies near.
The dark barrier. The first colony they found was empty. Not destroyed, not attacked, simply empty. The buildings stood intact, power still running in some areas. Gardens had grown wild but were still alive. In one dwelling, Taeyang found a table set for dinner, plates still waiting for food that never came. "It is like they just walked away," his second officer said, her voice uneasy. "Or flew away," Taeyang corrected, looking at the empty landing pads. "All the ships are gone. They took everything that could move and left everything that could not." They found more colonies like this, 7 in total, all abandoned in perfect order. No signs of struggle, no emergency broadcasts, no distress signals. Just silence and empty buildings. But what disturbed Taeyang most was the technology left behind. In one research facility, he found computer systems far more advanced than anything the Council used. They had been wiped clean, all data removed, but the hardware itself was extraordinary. Quantum processors that could handle calculations the Council's best computers would need years to complete. Power generators that pulled energy from seemingly nowhere. Material science that made Council alloys look like primitive iron. How did they develop this in just 50 years? His science officer asked, running scans on a piece of equipment they could not even identify. "Maybe they did not," Taeyang said quietly. "Maybe they found something out there. Maybe they found someone." Back at Council headquarters, Yuna had risen to the rank of senior analyst. Her job was to track patterns and anomalies across the galaxy, to spot problems before they became crises. Lately, she had been spotting many anomalies, and they all pointed in the same direction. She spread the reports across her desk. Unknown ships detected at the galactic rim. Energy signatures that matched no known technology. Star systems showing signs of megastructure construction on a scale the Council had never attempted. And always the sources disappeared before any investigation could reach them. "They are out there," she muttered to herself. "The humans are still out there, and they are building something." She had tried to tell the Council. She had written more reports, compiled more evidence, but the response was always the same. Without direct confirmation, the Council would not act. They preferred to believe the anomalies were natural phenomena or mistakes in the sensor data. They did not want to admit that humans might have not only survived but thrived. Yuna pulled up a star map showing the entire galaxy. The Council's territory was marked in blue, a large cluster near the galactic core. It looked impressive, thousands of systems under organized rule. But around the edges, at the very rim of the galaxy, there were dozens of red markers where anomalies had been detected. They formed a pattern, a rough circle that seemed to be surrounding the Council's space. A cold feeling settled in Yuna's stomach. The humans were not hiding. They were not struggling to survive. They were out there watching, building, growing, and the Council had no idea what they had become. She tried once more to schedule a meeting with the High Council. Her request was denied. They were too busy with trade disputes and border negotiations. They had no time for theories about disappeared humans and unexplained sensor readings. Yuna sat alone in her office as night fell over the city. Outside her window, the lights of the capital sparkled like stars. It was beautiful, orderly, and safe. The Council had built this peace over thousands of years. But peace built on ignorance was fragile. And somewhere out in the dark, something was growing that the Council refused to see. A message arrived on her personal terminal. It was from Captain Taeyang, now returned from his expedition. She had met him a few times at official functions. He was smart, ambitious, and one of the few military officers who actually read analyst reports. "Analyst Yuna," the message read, "I saw things at the old human colonies that trouble me. Technology we cannot explain. Developments that should have taken centuries, not decades. I believe you were right in your reports. The humans did not fail. They evolved. We should be concerned. We should be very concerned," Yuna wrote back immediately. "No one will listen. I have tried. The Council believes what it wants to believe." His response came quickly. "Then we watch and wait, and we prepare for the day when silence ends." Yuna looked at the star map again, at those red markers forming their circle around Council space. The silence had lasted 50 years. It could not last forever. Eventually, the humans would reveal themselves. The only question was when and what they would have become by then. In the empty spaces between stars, in the dark places where Council sensors could not reach, humanity was already answering that question. But the Council would not know until it was far too late to change anything. They had permitted humanity to leave in silence. Now they would learn what that silence had been hiding. The first incident happened on a Tuesday, though few people would remember that detail later. What they would remember was the impossible thing that occurred above the Velcron colony world of Thrace. Admiral Taiyang had been promoted again, now commanding the Council's peacekeeping forces in the outer sectors. He received the distress call while reviewing routine patrol reports. A Velcron war fleet had been sent to bring a rebellious client species back into line. The clients, a species called the Novan, had refused to pay their taxes and demanded independence. The Council's response was predictable and harsh. Send ships, make a show of force, and remind everyone who held power. But something had gone wrong, terribly wrong. All weapons are offline, the fleet commander reported, his voice shaking with confusion and fear. Every ship, every system. We cannot fire, we cannot defend. Our targeting computers show errors we have never seen. And there is something else out there. We see shadows on our sensors, ships that should not exist. What kind of ships? Taiyang demanded. Unknown design, unknown origin. They appeared when we prepared to fire on the Novan settlements. They did nothing, launched no weapons, sent no signals. But every offensive system we have simply stopped working. Sir, it is as if our ships have been neutered. The fleet limped back to Council space 3 days later. Engineers examined every system and found nothing wrong. The weapons worked perfectly in testing. But every crew member swore the same story. When they had tried to attack, something had stopped them. Something invisible and unstoppable. Taiyang filed a report. The Council reviewed it, debated it, and ultimately filed it away as a technical malfunction. Equipment failed sometimes. There was no need to assume outside interference. The second incident came a month later. An Ordathi colony world lay in the path of a massive asteroid. Calculations showed impact in 72 hours. Evacuation was impossible for a population of 6 million. The colony prepared for death. Lieutenant Commander Hana was stationed on the nearest peacekeeping vessel. She watched helplessly as the asteroid approached. Council ships tried to divert it with weapons fire, but the rock was too large, too dense. Nothing they did made any difference. Then, 12 hours before impact, the asteroid changed course. Not gradually, but suddenly, as if a giant hand had reached out and pushed it aside. Sensors showed an energy spike of unknown origin, coming from empty space. The asteroid missed the planet by 300,000 kilometers. Did we do that? Hana asked her crew. No, Commander. Our weapons had no effect. Something else moved it. Something with power levels we cannot measure. Hana stared at the sensor data, her mind racing. Log everything. Every detail. I want to know what saved those people. The incidents multiplied. Pirate fleets that had plagued trade routes for years suddenly vanished. Not defeated, not captured, simply gone. One day they were raiding ships, the next day they were nowhere to be found. Search parties found their bases empty, ships abandoned in deep space with crews missing. A slave market on the edge of Council space was destroyed overnight. The slavers killed, the slaves freed and left with supplies and coordinates to safe worlds. No one claimed responsibility. Survivors spoke of ships that appeared from nowhere, silent and swift. Hana began investigating. It was not her official assignment, but she could not let it go. She traveled to each incident site, interviewed witnesses, collected data. A pattern emerged, clear and undeniable. Someone was watching Council space, someone with technology far beyond anything the Council possessed, and that someone was enforcing a moral code. The aggressive were stopped. The innocent were protected. The cruel were punished. Who would do this? Her second officer asked as they reviewed evidence in her quarters. Someone who believes in justice more than law, Hana said. Someone who acts instead of debates. But who has this kind of power? Hana pulled up an old file, one she had found in the archives. It showed the last known positions of human ships before they entered the Dark Barrier. She overlaid it with the incident locations. They did not match exactly, but there was a correlation. The incidents all happened in regions where human colonies had once existed. It is them, she whispered, the humans. They never left. They have been watching us all along. The Council finally called an emergency session after the 12th incident. This time they could not ignore what was happening. Councillor Hyun stood before his peers, older now and less certain than he had once been. We face an unknown force operating in our territory, he said, his voice carefully neutral. Multiple incidents suggest outside interference. We must determine the source and intent of these actions. The humans, someone said from the back of the chamber. It was Somi, a younger council member who had joined long after humanity's departure. Everyone is thinking it. Why not say it? We have no proof, the Velcrown representative growled. These could be natural phenomena, equipment malfunctions, coincidence. 12 coincidences? Somi challenged. All helping the weak and stopping the strong. That is not coincidence. That is policy. Hyun raised a hand for silence. We will not speculate. We will investigate. I am ordering a full sensor sweep of the dark barrier. We will find the source of these incidents. But before the order could be implemented, a message arrived at council headquarters. It was broadcast on all frequencies, impossible to block or ignore. The translation matrix identified the language immediately. Human Standard English. Attention, Galactic Council. We are humanity. We have not forgotten our former colleagues. We watch your territories with interest. We take no action against you, but we will not stand idle when innocents suffer. Continue your governance as you see fit. But know that justice has eyes beyond your borders. We hope you are well. The message was signed by Ambassador Minho, successor to Jiwon, who had led humanity into the dark 75 years ago. Silence fell over the council chamber, not the comfortable silence of agreement, but the terrible silence of fear. Where did the message come from? The Velcran demanded. The communications officer checked his instruments 3 times before answering. Sir, triangulation shows multiple source points. The same message came from 12 different locations simultaneously, all outside the galaxy. The transmission power alone exceeds our entire planetary communications grid by a factor of 10,000. Counselor Hyun felt something cold settle in his chest. It was a feeling he had not experienced in his long life. It was fear, but not fear of attack or invasion. It was fear of irrelevance, of being left behind by something that had grown beyond his understanding. What have they become? Somi asked quietly. No one had an answer, but everyone understood that the silence had ended. The humans had revealed themselves, if only slightly, and the glimpse they had shown suggested that the Council's greatest mistake had not been letting humanity leave. It had been believing they would fail. In her office, Yuna read the message over and over. She had been right. She had warned them. But being right brought no satisfaction, only dread for what would come next. Somewhere beyond the galaxy, in spaces the Council had never imagined exploring, humanity was building something new. And the Council was about to learn just how far they had fallen behind. The alarm sirens began at dawn. Admiral Taeyang was in his quarters when the emergency broadcast cut through every channel, every screen, every communication device across Council space. All military forces to battle stations. The Devourer fleet has returned. This is not a drill. The Devourer fleet has returned? Taeyang felt his blood turn cold. The Devourers were legend, nightmare stories told to children. They had come once before, thousands of years ago, before the Council had even formed. They were machines, massive and mindless, that consumed entire worlds for raw materials. The ancient civilizations had barely survived their first invasion, and that was only because the Devourers had left as mysteriously as they had arrived. Now they were back. Taeyang reached the command bridge within minutes. The displays showed the horror in detail. A fleet of 300 Devourer ships had appeared at the edge of Council space. Each ship was the size of a small moon, dark metal covered in grinding machinery. They moved toward the closest inhabited system with slow, inevitable purpose. Deploy the defense fleet, the Supreme Commander ordered. Everything we have. We stop them here or we lose everything. Taeyang took command of the 3rd battle group, 60 ships that represented decades of military development. They met the Devourer vanguard near the Theta system, home to 2 billion Ordathi civilians. The battle was a slaughter. Council weapons bounced off Devourer armor like rain on stone. Their shields absorbed energy blasts that should have vaporized mountains. Meanwhile, the Devourer's weapons cut through Council ships like paper. Massive beams of concentrated matter ripped hulls apart. Swarms of smaller machines latched onto vessels and began eating them from the outside in. Fall back, Taeyang ordered after losing half his fleet in the first 10 minutes. All ships retreat to secondary positions. But there was nowhere to retreat to. The Devourers were everywhere, their formation perfect and unstoppable. Taeyang watched ship after ship die on his displays. He watched good people, brave people, die in fire and vacuum. His own vessel shook as a devourer beam grazed their shields, dropping them to 30% capacity. "This is Admiral Taeyang to all Council forces," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "We cannot win this fight. Evacuate civilian populations. Save who you can. If these are our last moments, we face them with honor." His tactical officer looked at him with wide eyes. "Sir, sensors are detecting new contacts. Multiple ships entering the battle zone. They are not devourers. They are not ours. Identification codes are... They are human." Taeyang's display filled with new markers. Ships appeared out of nowhere, hundreds of them, and they were like nothing he had ever seen. They were elegant where the devourers were brutal, flowing curves instead of harsh angles. They glowed with an inner light, as if the hulls themselves were alive. The lead human ship was massive, dwarfing even the devourer vessels. It moved into position between the Council fleet and the enemy with impossible speed. "This is Fleet Commander Isul of the Human Federation," a voice said over all channels. "Council forces, maintain your position. We will handle the threat." What happened next seemed impossible. The human ships opened fire and space itself seemed to bend. Weapons that made no sense struck the devourers with devastating effect. Time seemed to slow around some enemy ships, freezing them in place while others were hit. Matter reorganization beams turned devourer armor into dust. Shields that existed in multiple dimensions deflected attacks that should have been unstoppable. The battle lasted 6 minutes. When it ended, every devourer ship in the vanguard had been destroyed or disabled. The human fleet had not lost a single vessel. Taeyang sat in his command chair, unable to speak. Around him, his crew stared at their displays in shock. The Council's most powerful fleet had been crushed in minutes. The humans had won in even less time. "This is Admiral Taeyang of the Galactic Council," he finally managed to say. "Commander Isul, we owe you our lives. Our gratitude cannot be measured." "Admiral," Isul's voice came back, cool and professional. "We did not do this for you. We did this because the devourers threaten civilian populations. We protect all sentient life in this region, whether you are Council members or not." The words stung, but Taeyang understood. The humans had not saved them out of friendship or alliance. They had saved them out of principle. It was a lesson in humility he would not soon forget. Within hours, a human diplomatic ship arrived at Council headquarters. Ambassador Minho stepped out and Taeyang was there to greet him. The human looked remarkably like Jiwan had looked 80 years ago in the old recordings, but there was a calmness to him, a confidence that came from knowing his place in the universe. "Ambassador," Taeyang said, bowing deeply. "The Council requests an audience." "Of course," Minho said with a slight smile. "We have much to discuss." The Council chamber was full for the first time in years. Every representative was present, and all of them stared at Minho as he walked to the center of the floor. Councillor Hyun sat in his throne, looking older and smaller than Taeyang remembered. "Ambassador Minho," Hyun said, his voice lacking its usual authority. "On behalf of the Council, I thank you for your intervention. You have saved billions of lives." "You are welcome," Minho said simply, "though I wonder if thanks are necessary. We would have acted regardless of your gratitude." "We must know," the Velcran said, leaning forward. "What have you become? How did you develop such power in only 80 years? Minho smiled. "The Dark Barrier was not a barrier at all. It was a gateway. Beyond it, we found ancient portals left by civilizations that existed before your Council, before your histories. These portals led to other galaxies, other clusters of stars filled with life. We have spent 80 years exploring, learning, growing. We have met species far older than any Council race. We have built a federation of hundreds of worlds, all dedicated to freedom and cooperation." "You have been to other galaxies?" Somi asked, her voice filled with wonder. 17 at last count, Minho confirmed. "Each one teaches us something new. The Council's territory, impressive as it is, represents less than 1% of 1% of the universe. There is so much more out there than you ever imagined." Hyun's form seemed to dim. "Why did you not contact us? Why did you leave us in silence?" "You told us to leave," Minho said, and there was no anger in his voice, only statement of fact. "You mocked our curiosity. You constrained our growth. We left because we had to, not because we wanted to. And once we left, we discovered that you were not the pinnacle of civilization. You were just another step on an endless staircase. Will you share your technology with us?" the Velcran asked. Will you teach us what you have learned? Minho shook his head slowly. No, not yet. You treated us like children who needed constant supervision. We left and became adults. Technology is not the problem, Council representatives. Your thinking is the problem. You have been comfortable for so long that you have forgotten how to grow. Until you remember, until you are willing to question your own limitations, our technology would be wasted on you. Then why did you save us? Hyun asked quietly. Because we are not you, Minho said. We do not abandon those in need, even if they once abandoned us. We protect life because it is right, not because it benefits us. That is what you could have learned from us 80 years ago. Perhaps now you will finally understand. The council sat in silence as Minho turned and walked toward the exit. At the doorway, he paused and looked back. The universe is vast beyond your understanding. We hope someday you will have the courage to truly see it. When that day comes, we will be waiting. Then he was gone, leaving the council to face what they had become and what they had lost. 5 years had passed since the Devourer attack. 5 years since humanity revealed itself and changed everything. The galaxy looked different now, though the stars themselves had not moved. What had changed was understanding, perspective, and the careful order the council had maintained for so long. Councillor Hyun stood in his office for the last time. He was retiring, forced out not by age but by irrelevance. The council had restructured after the crisis, removing many of the old guard who had led them into stagnation. Hyun had fought the changes at first, argued that tradition mattered, that the old ways had kept peace for millennia. But his arguments fell on deaf ears. The council's member species had seen what humanity had become, and they wanted change. He looked at the data tablet in his hands, reading reports he barely understood anymore. The council had managed to colonize 5 new systems this year, but 37 client species had requested independence. Most of those requests had been granted. The council no longer had the authority or the will to force others to stay. Without the threat of military action, their power was revealed as hollow. Sir, your transport is ready, his assistant said from the doorway. Hyun nodded slowly. Tell me something. Do you think we were wrong? About the humans? The assistant, a young Ordathi, barely 50 years old, considered the question carefully. I think we were afraid, sir. Afraid of change, afraid of being less important. The humans threatened our sense of order, so we pushed them away. And now they are beyond us, Hyun said bitterly. Beyond our reach, beyond our understanding. We had the chance to grow with them, to explore the universe together. Instead, we chose comfort. Yes, sir, the assistant agreed. We chose comfort. And comfort has a price. Hyun left his office without looking back. The view from his window, once so beautiful, now seemed small and limited. He understood finally what the humans had tried to tell them so long ago. The galaxy was not a place to be controlled. It was a place to be explored. Across the city, in the council's intelligence center, Yuna worked late into the night. She had been promoted to chief analyst, one of the few from the old administration to survive the restructuring. Her job now was to help the council understand the new reality they faced. She had a visitor tonight. Nari, a human liaison officer assigned to help manage the relationship between the council and the Human Federation. They met regularly now, sharing information and building bridges that should have existed decades ago. The latest numbers are concerning, Yuna said, showing Nari her display. 6 more species have applied to join the Human Federation this month. They are leaving us. They are choosing freedom, Nari corrected gently. The Federation does not require obedience. We offer partnership, knowledge, and protection, but we do not force anyone to join and we do not prevent anyone from leaving. You make us look like tyrants, Yuna said, though there was no anger in her voice, just weariness. We do not need to make you look like anything, Nari replied. Your own actions did that. For thousands of years, the council maintained order through hierarchy. Client species, junior members, senior members. Everyone had their place and was expected to stay there. That works until someone shows there is another way, Yuna sighed. What will happen to the council? That depends on the council, Nari said. You can continue as you are, becoming smaller and less relevant as species choose other paths. Or you can change, truly change, and become something new. A partner instead of a ruler. A teacher instead of a master. After everything we did to humanity, why do you even talk to us? Why not just let us fade away? Nari smiled. Because holding grudges is a waste of energy. You made mistakes, yes. You were arrogant and short-sighted, but you also taught us things when we first joined the galaxy. You showed us we were not alone. That matters. We have not forgotten the good along with the bad. In the military headquarters, Admiral Taeyang prepared for a very different kind of meeting. He was meeting with Commander Isul, the human officer who had saved his fleet during the Devourer attack. They had stayed in contact over the years, and Taeyang had learned much from her. They met in a neutral location, a space station on the edge of Council territory. Taeyang arrived first, his small shuttle dwarfed by the station's bulk. When Isul's ship arrived, he was struck again by its beauty. Human ships were works of art, not just tools of war. Admiral Isul greeted him warmly. "It is good to see you again," Commander Taeyang replied. "Thank you for meeting with me. I have a proposal I hope you will consider." They walked through the station's observation deck, looking out at the stars. Taeyang explained his idea. The Council wanted to reform its military, to move away from its role as enforcer and toward a role as protector. He wanted human advisors to help with the transition. "We have been soldiers of oppression for too long," he said. "I want us to become soldiers of defense. Real defense, not just defending the Council's authority." Isul listened carefully. "This is a significant change. Many in your government will resist. Let them resist," Taeyang said with a firmness that surprised even himself. "I have seen what real military excellence looks like. I watched your fleet destroy in minutes what we could not stop in hours. But more than that, I saw why you fight. You fight to protect, not to control. That is what we should have been all along." "You are different from the Council I remember," Isul observed. "The one that dismissed us." "The Devourer attack changed me," Taeyang admitted. "I thought I was prepared to die that day. I had accepted it. Then you arrived and showed me how little I understood about the universe. It was humbling. It was necessary. I do not want to be the soldier of a dying empire. I want to be part of something better." Isul extended her hand. "Then we will help you. Not because we want something from the Council, but because we want to see you grow." They shook hands, Human and Velcran. Former enemies now working toward a common future. The Council chamber had changed. Half the thrones sat empty now, their former occupants having departed as their species chose independence or partnership with other federations. The remaining Council members met in a smaller, more humble setting. The age of grand pronouncements and absolute authority was over. Somi had become the de facto leader of the new Council. She was young, idealistic, and unafraid to admit the mistakes of the past. Today, she addressed the remaining members with a proposal that would have been unthinkable a decade ago. "We have an invitation from the Human Federation," she announced. "They are hosting a gathering of galactic civilizations, hundreds of species from 17 galaxies. They have invited us to attend as observers." "Observers," the Velcran representative repeated. "Not participants." "Not yet," Somi confirmed. "They want us to see what they have built, to understand what is possible when cooperation replaces hierarchy. If we impress them, if we show we have truly changed, perhaps we can join as equal partners in the future." "This is humiliating," one of the older members grumbled. "We are the Galactic Council. We do not attend as observers." "We are the Galactic Council of less than 500 star systems," Somi corrected. "Meanwhile, the Human Federation spans tens of thousands. Our pride nearly destroyed us once. I will not let it do so again." The vote was close, but the decision was made. The Council would attend as observers. They would learn what they could have been if they had chosen differently 80 years ago. Ambassador Minho stood in the Human Embassy, looking at a holographic image of Earth. He had been born there, on that blue and green world, but he had spent most of his life in space, building bridges between species and civilizations. His assistant approached with a message. "Sir, the Council has accepted our invitation. They will attend the gathering." "Good," Minho said. That took courage. "Perhaps there is hope for them yet. Do you think they can change? Truly change?" Minho considered the question. "I think change is always possible. It is never easy, never comfortable, but always possible." The Council fell in love with their own success and forgot that success is not a destination. It is a journey. Perhaps now they are ready to journey again. He thought back to Ambassador Jiwan, his predecessor, the man who had walked out of the Council chamber 80 years ago. Jiwan had died 20 years past, but his legacy lived on. He had led humanity into the unknown, not because he knew they would succeed, but because he knew they had to try. Send a message to the council, Minho said. Tell them we look forward to their arrival. Tell them we hope they are ready to see the universe as it truly is. Vast and beautiful and full of possibilities. Tell them it is never too late to choose growth over comfort. The message was sent. In the council chamber, the representatives read it in silence. Some felt shame, some felt hope, and some felt both. But all of them understood what it meant. Humanity had not forgotten them, had not abandoned them despite having every right to do so. The humans remembered what it was like to be small and uncertain, and they were offering the council a chance to become something more. Whether the council would take that chance remained to be seen. But for the first time in centuries, they had a choice to make that actually mattered. The age of certainty was over. The age of growth, uncertain and uncomfortable and necessary, was beginning. In the dark between stars, in the quiet places where no one was watching, Counselor Hyun sat alone in his retirement home. He looked at the sky and thought about the young human ambassador who had stood before the council so long ago. The one they had dismissed and mocked. "You were right," he whispered to the stars. "We were comfortable, and comfort made us small. I am sorry we did not listen. I'm sorry we wasted so much time." The stars did not answer. But somewhere out there, humanity was building, exploring, growing. And perhaps if the council could learn from their mistakes, there might still be time to join them in seeing what lay beyond the limits of fear and pride. The silence that had lasted 80 years was broken. What came next would be written by those brave enough to move forward instead of clinging to the past. The council had permitted humanity to leave in silence. Now they would learn whether they had the courage to follow them into the light.